Welcome, everyone. Today's quick webinar is designed to be an introduction. You may have already started your integrating digital scanning into your process, but this truly is meant to be an introduction and try to get you to think of some things and think of a bigger picture, that it's not as easy as just purchasing an instrument or having your vendors come in and drop in an instrument in your laboratory, and now everything is going to work the same way it used to. So let's get started. To do precision, to do digital scanning in your laboratory, you still have to make the consideration to do precision in histology. Standardization is key, again, even more so when you start scanning all of those slides, whichever type of slides you're going to do. You've got to have a good, standardized, consistent product. Highest quality of your stain slides with the least amount of variation. It even becomes more magnified as you add digital into your process. I'm going to tell you that you have to be bringing barcoding into your laboratory if you don't. One of the necessary things to effectively use integration of your process, the digital scanning, and your LIS system. That's virtually impossible to do, this seamless, we hope to get to seamless integration without barcoding. You have to use semi-automation and automation wherever you can in the laboratory. You're going to need to gain as much efficiency as possible, because the bottom line is, when you add this next step into your process, is that you're going to be adding time and a lot of effort of your technical people. Again, full integration of histology with information technology. It's not going to be enough that you've got reporting software anymore. You're going to have to learn a little bit more about what your technology is, your IT, how you're going to affect that. You're going to have to also work towards, again, error-free results. If you have issues with your slides, you're going to have issues multiplied through this integration, and I feel that the defects and errors can almost have an easier path to getting out to the pathologist and out past us. And then again, unfortunately, when you bring this into your laboratory, you're going to have to re-optimize your workflow. Small batch, small batch, small batch. I mean, you're going to have to figure out, once you place in the digital scanning, how you're going to be able to optimize your workflow to get all of this done within pretty much the same sort of time constraints we've always had to work with. So how do we move to this? Again, this is about sitting down and planning. You've got to create a plan. It's got to be bigger than your histology lab. It's got to be mostly IT. You don't want to shut down your systems because you're now sending off these large images all over your system. You have to redouble your efforts on quality on your glass slide. It's imperative that you have museum quality, standardized glass slides for what you're putting in. You know, to optimize your barcoding and automation, both. You know, it's not enough just to have your requisition, your specimen. Now you've got to have your cassettes, your slides, everything. Check quality, double check quality. Put in good quality checks all the way through your system. Recreate your workflow. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. I've just got some simplified workflows, but it seems simple enough to put digital in, but you've got to be working in a different flow so that you can incorporate in the total time process required for digital. Develop a close relationship with IT. You're going to have to understand a whole bunch of new terms. You're going to have much, much closer relationships with IT, because you're asking to use a lot of the network and the systems that sit out there. And then you really have to understand the capabilities of your department and the instruments, so that you can effectively back up and recreate that workflow. Again, this sounds redundant, but I can't impress upon it to streamline your workflow. We're going to take out all the unnecessary steps as possible. You're trying to get rid of that work in process. You're trying to make sure that you move your tissue sample through the tissue processing, through the cutting, through staining, as efficiently and as small batch as possible, so that you can quickly move it into the digital portion of your process. Because your pathologist, who's our customer, is sitting out there waiting for slides the same time as normal, and they're probably going to in today's atmosphere, they are going to get a combination of glass and digital. You can't replace digital, your glass completely with digital. You have to understand your data and your platforms, understand not only that now the software of your digital scanner, but how that software is going to work with your LIS systems, whether you have a different system for your anatomic pathology and then your information system. The more servers and systems you have, the more detailed and difficult this gets. Make consistency a key part of your plan. You've got to get to the point of everything being done the same way every day. You have to demand that with your processes, not only is it precision processing, but it is very much about small batch workflow. And then what you really want to do is as you're planning and you're redoing your workflow, you want to use the technology to really enhance the expertise not only of your histology laboratory and those technicians and technologists that you have there, but also your pathologists. That's the ultimate goal when you're adding digital pathology into your system and recreating your system and your workflows, that you're looking to use this technology to enhance their expertise. Most of us have probably, or many of us, if not most of us, have already incorporated digital to some point. If you're doing ERPR HER2/neu, you've got a digital process that is already been incorporated into. So I'll ask you to think back just how that small portion of your total work affected how you did your workflow. Now, as you start adding more slides and more opportunities for digital, it's just going to multiply the effect it can have on your total department. So what we get defined small batch workflow. You're going to increase standardization at every step again. Keep ratcheting down the standardization because you need to remove the variation. You want the most consistent product going in and out of your digital process at all times. You will develop a greater partnership with your pathologist. You have to. You have to have a very close relationship with the person who's going to be the ultimate reviewer of that data, the digital slide. You're going to have a better integration of your patient information throughout by barcoding, by integrating and connecting all of your reporting software, your LIS software. You're going to be able to pull all of this information together throughout your system instead of, which is typical, which is at the end. This also means that you're going to have a lot more data to deal with. So you're going to have to start trying to understand just exactly where IT can help you and how you can better partner with it. You want total interoperability of the information. You need to be able to attach this data, find this data, manipulate the data, and pull it around to help create that new report that you're going to be developing. Again, I know this sounds so ambiguous, but there are so many different things that you need to start looking at now to make sure that you can get there. You've got the opportunity to further enhance your automated quantitative image analysis. There will be many more opportunities than just doing quantitative assistance for the grading of your ERPR, your HER2/neu, EGRF, whatever other new algorithm that you have access to and becomes available to you. That will help you to fully automate that process. And it's going to be driving a lot more data towards your end user, which is your pathologist. So again, that relationship with the pathologist, you can't just dump data to them and then hope that their workflow is somehow going to adjust itself. So you're really going to have to also have a lean management of your work process. You've got to make sure that it moves in a very smooth and consistent, but in the most correct flow so that you can effectively and appropriately work with the materials that we have, which are tissues, blocks, and slides, to convert those to digital data that can then be delivered to the pathologist in a combined way of glass slide and digital image to give them more information, which ultimately allows us to enhance the diagnosis and the patient result. This is just an example of a standard workflow, but the idea that I want you to get here is just a simplified standard AP workflow. Look at all the different steps. You have to make sure that all these different steps are worked to a small batch process, that they are completely standardized and efficient, because at each one of these steps there's an opportunity to amplify and sometimes prevent the proper delivery of both your glass slide and your digital data to the pathologist. So there are a variety of steps that we always deal with each and every day. You just have to become more aware of it, and I don't have another word for it, you have to control that process. I don't want you to be controlling, but we have to control that process, because all of these parts have to move smoothly each and every time for us to continue to develop and deliver more and more information than we're used to the pathologist. This is the simplified digital workflow. I see this a lot of times. The vendors will come in and say, well, we just have to plop in a digital scanner. That little red box can turn your department into chaos. Again, now you have a new technology that not everybody is going to be comfortable with, that many will not be familiar with, but can sometimes demand a lot more of our time and effort as the technician and technologist than we ever thought would happen to us in the department. So again, the idea of this quick little workflow is that it seems simple. We're just going to stick a little process called digital scanning in between our case assembly and distribution, and then everything else is going to work the same. Not so. The whole work process, before and after, continually moves in and out and integrates with your digital scanning process. And then here's a simplified digital IT workflow. To start with the glass slide. So we've got to do everything that we've normally done to get to that glass slide, and then we have this whole new workflow that takes time and effort and a lot of effort. Most important is that the glass slides are not normally they are not going to be handled. We're not going to turn over all the glass slides to the pathologist, and the pathologists are going to go through the process of taking this digital scanning process and decide what they want to scan and how they're going to scan it and what needs to be rescanned. Histology staff is going to have to be intimately involved in this whole process. So once glass slides come out, instead of just turning them over to this is one of the big changes, instead of just turning those glass slides over to the pathologist and having them integrate information from the reporting software, the LIS, reading the slide and making that differential diagnosis, we're now starting the first step in your digital IT flow is that the histology department is now integrating all that information and starting to put it together. Then we have to then look at the loading digital scanners, the digital slide scanners, whether it's one in your department or multiple, and that decision will be on what your time factors are and the amount of data that you're going to create. Are you going to create just one digital image per slide? Probably not. Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 20? There's a lot of coordination and decision process that has to be made. So this is going to be technicians and technologists making this decision. Then you've got the digital slide. Once we've created the digital slide, and then there has to be all this communication on the IT side with your slide scanner software and server. You've got an AP LIS. You've got possibly then another hospital LIS. All of these have to be interfaced, integrated, and working seamlessly, so it comes in and out. Now that we created all of that work to pull things together and put them into the digital scanning process, then I say that it needs to come back out into histology again, and there needs to be some review of it and making sure that we have the correct information, that we may not have to rescan information, that we may have to then pull and pull more information from the different servers and reporting software before it then gets to the pathologist. So this whole time, histology has then inserted themselves even more. And again, back to why you have to be a better partner with the pathologist and especially IT, is that now histology becomes even more important to make sure that all of this is integrated. Then it gets to the pathologist. That's one of the final steps. So there's a lot of steps in between here that sometimes seem, we'll just bring in the scanner, we'll just stick in a couple of slides, we'll scan it, and everything will be better. There is a lot of time, effort in all of this. Really, the reason you have to look at your overall process and go back and redesign your workflow is that this is all a time factor. Sticking in histology staff to do this means you're probably pulling histology staff off of doing other production work, and then staff to review. These are all multiple and time-consuming steps. We won't even get into with the different companies out there and the different times of scanning in that, but these are not going to be a minute or two of scanning. These are going to be sometimes many, many minutes per slide, depending on at what level and what you want to do with those. So time factor is just going to can create chaos in your histology and blow up your whole process. I can't impress upon you how much more effort and time that histology is going to have to be involved here. So again, those other workflows that were just simplified, but just an idea is that thing that I want you to get is that there are multiple steps in the manual histology process. We're now going to try to integrate those multiple steps into a new technology, which is the digital pathology, which is more demanding and more precise. And then we have to keep it all within the total time constraint of are you going to be able to keep it in for your normal turnaround time, whether that's 1 hour, 2 days, 1 day, what is it? Most often the expectation is that by adding this enhancement of information that we're not going to be extending any turnaround times. So workflow. Workflow is where you're going to have to start at. You're going to have to make some decisions about what you want to do with this, but you've got to look at your overall workflow. I say small batches a must. Whether you start at processing or whether it's at cutting and staining, but the further away from in the steps prior to digital scan, the further away you get from the scanner and start your small batch, I think the better you will be about how your overall workflow can be adjusted and stay within those defined time constraints. You cannot cut, stain, and cover slip and then scan all in the same amount of time. And you can't turn out, if your department is turning out 100 blocks a day and maybe 300-400 slides, you can't wait till those 300 slides are completed and now let's decide how we're going to scan. You'll create a tremendous bottleneck and stop things, and that your customer, the pathologist, is not going to be agreeable with that. And you can't jam all the slides to the scanner quickly. Whether you have a scanner that does 4 slides or one that does 300 slides, I'm sure you load up a scanner and you press the button and the magic door closes. You have to understand that if I'm sticking in so many slides, when am I going to start getting data and how am I going to start working with that data? You need the time to scan, rescan, review, and organize. The more standardized, the more efficient, the less variation, and the more precise you get in your system, I'm pretty confident that you'll have less and less rescans, and you can then start streamlining that scanning reviewing time. But when you first start out, this is going to be a tremendous burden on the time constraints and the manpower in your laboratory. It is a completely new burden on the histology personnel. You know, think of it, in your department, you're very fortunate if you have everyone who is now reviewing special stains, IHC, maybe H&Es, and involved in reviewing all of that before it goes out to the pathologist. If not, that's pretty much what we're talking about. You're reviewing all of that work at a microscopic or on a screen level, which is a microscopic level before it goes out to pathologists. So it's no more just producing, throwing in a scanner and throw it out. That's not going to happen anymore. And then you have to match the work and reading, and that, see, I'm sorry, we have a typo error. That should be capabilities of the pathologist. Even if you could buy 10 scanners and all of a sudden I can dump all this out, the pathologist can't read all of that. So somehow your workflow has to match what the capabilities, well, always has to match what the capabilities of your pathologist. You know, what is it? Now that you've added digital, if they're able to read 7 or 10, maybe if they're derm paths, maybe they're reading 20 cases an hour and signing those out. Now that you've added, even if you added one digital image to the glass slide, you've doubled their viewing time, whether it's a few seconds or whether it's multiple minutes. You may be adding multiple images, so you've got to be able to match that workflow with the reading capabilities of the pathologist. So streamlining the workflow and understanding starting with the big picture and then working through it is very, very essential. So you have to understand your data and platform. And we won't get too deep into this because there's so many different LISs out there, but some of the simple stuff is, well, you got to sit down and talk about it before you buy the scanner. What will you scan? What does the pathologist want to scan? Is it frozen section consults? Is it special cases that they want to scan? Recuts, special stains, IHCs, tumor board, education, consults, outside consults. What can you scan? Well, at this point, you can't scan and put out a primary diagnosis, but there are, even in small labs, probably hundreds of different slides that can now be scanned to help enhance the capabilities and the performance of your pathologist. So it's very important that you kind of start with, you know, what are we going to scan? Then you can decide what kind of digital scanner, how much IT you need, you know, because think about it, sending one image over a system is not going to change things. You got more than one pathologist and more than one image. You can quickly shut down your intranet that you have in the system. You can quickly shut down your LIS if you're not in that discussion with IT about what you're going to be putting onto this system. Again, further understanding your data and plan is, well, gee, what resolution will you scan? Will it be 10x? Will it be 20? Some of the systems go out there to 40x, and then the software can take you to 60 and 80x. Will you HD scan? Is it going to be an HD view? There's so many different things that now, as histotechnicians and technologists, that we need to know. It can be mind-boggling. Will you Z-stack? How many slices through the sections? Do they need Z-stacking? What is the ultimate goal? So you kind of really start at the end, what you're wanting to try to achieve and enhance in that diagnosis, and kind of work back. Is it whole slides? Are we going to slide all the, if we're going to do whole slides, or is it designated areas? Either way, just thinking about that you're now going to start scanning slides, you need to think about, well, gee, the way we've already always cut and put on the slide, do we need to put as many sections as we do now? Do we need to place those sections closer together? What's going to change in your microtomy protocols, because now you're going to be scanning. And you want to make sure that all of those match together and help the system be as efficient as possible. Then now that we've decided how we're going to scan, how many scans? Is it going to be one slide, multiple designated areas? Who's going to pick those? Are there going to be certain protocols out front? Is it going to be automated that's going to do that? Is there an algorithm built into the software that's going to do an automatic selection, or will pathologists think of it? Now you've given scans to the pathologist, and they make decisions that they want something rescanned, they want specific areas. Well, somebody has to manage that part too and get it back to them efficiently. And then how will you put the scans together? This is no different than once you start assembling your case of hard, your glass slides of your hard units that you have. You assemble those in the flats. You have to assemble that case and get that to the pathologist with the appropriate patient information. You also have to be able to understand how you're going to do that digitally. So again, a lot of time, a lot of effort involved to make sure that all this additional information is going to the pathologist. And again, most often you have to stay within the same time constraints as always. Somehow we've got to put in this new technology. We have to enhance our capabilities and increase our customer service to our patients. But hey, let's not affect the turnaround time at all. Then discuss and explore your IT possibilities. If you're even thinking about adding any sort of digital scanning, get to your IT department today and start having meetings. You got to have them as early in the process and often. You have to understand, where's the server going to reside? How many different servers? Who's going to maintain that server? Who's paying for the server? It sounds simple that we're going to buy a scanner, but now you've got to save all these images, and where's that storage going to come? Who's going to pay for that storage? Where's that storage going to be? How's it going to be backed up? What's the size of the data files you're going to create? Is it going to be by cases? Is it going to be by individual images? A lot more detail has to be understood. And how will you be using the network? This is a big one. If you're even if your pathologists are across the hall from you, you're going to be using a network to deliver all of this digital information. You can quickly shut down the network with digital scans. When will the pathologist be using the network? A lot of times you can go and talk with your IT and they'll tell you that we have this capability and capacity in the network. Well, that's at 11 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. Now we're talking about from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody in the system wants to use the network. Well, you got a pace less than dial-up. No one's going to be happy. What will the data files do to the network? That's the size. How you're going to use that bandwidth? How much more bandwidth? My experience has been, now we're talking about increasing bandwidth. This is not, you're not asking your company to add $100 or $1,000. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to add more bandwidth so that you can start putting these tremendously large files back and forth. What kind of department and site connections do you need to have? These are why you need to start talking to IT today. This cost will be many more times than the cost of a scanner that goes into histology. The cost of IT for being able to integrate the software, use the network, and store all of your images is many, many, many more times than what you're talking about in that physical scanner that goes in. And then something I didn't even mention, software licenses. If you buy a scanner from a particular company and you don't buy the ongoing license, what's it going to cost you to get the upgrades to their software, to their capabilities? These are all, as always, there's these hidden costs, but the sooner you start the discussion with IT, the sooner you'll understand what this total project. And again, a lot of money, and stay within the time constraints, and guess what? Most often, unless there is some sort of automated algorithm for a diagnosis-related procedure, we're not talking about a new CPT code. We're trying to add all of this technology and this enhancement by gaining through efficiencies, risk mitigation, customer service. We're not going to be able to just pile on a new CPT code and pay for this. You have to make consistency a key part of your plan. You got to start at the beginning of your process. Don't wait until you get to staining to say, hey, now I need to be consistent in quality control. Precision equals consistency will equal less scans. And again, I say, when you think about where that digital scanner is going in your process, the further away from the digital scanner toward the beginning of your process you start with precision, the better your process is going to be, the most efficient, and I believe the less scans. Poor quality of section means poor quality of scan. This digital scanning is not going to be able to correct or make better any deficiencies we have in our process. Poor quality of scan, it's probably going to be multiplied because there's so many different ways you can manipulate that digital scan. Consistency will enhance the pathologist's expertise. That's true whether we stick in a digital scanner or not. And then again, you have to set a plan and stick to the plan. Planning and execution here is very critical, and that will help you create that consistency. Remember, poor quality of our section, and I'm not saying that it's a quality that we can't make, pathologists can't adjust and make a diagnosis for. It becomes more difficult as you add in the digital images because now they're seeing even a more enhanced image of that glass slide, and it creates more questions. So best quality is what you're trying to do, and you want to have the least amount of scans as possible. Your process will demand you recreate your workflow. And you have to sit down and really work through this one about what will be the time needed to load, scan, and review, and deliver. Will you be able to load, if your workflow is possible, that you're going to be doing we'll call it the pre-processing up through your, say, your H&E staining, just your H&E staining if you're going to be doing that. When will you be able to load? Will you have the luxury of scanning throughout the overnight and then turning those out the next day? Do you have to scan throughout the day and turn out those results? Most often, once you come up and you say, I've got X amount of slides and I need this kind of time constraint, less time to scan. If you need less scanning time, that usually means more scanners. That can be very costly and can be a big obstacle for you. Most scanners are not very inexpensive, so it's saying that I need 4 or 5 or 6. You're lucky if you're going to get 1. Again, small batch, small batch, small batch. You don't want to, even if you can load 300 slides into a scanner, you're going to be working with the digital images in much more small batches as they come out. You can't wait till those 300 slides complete and then decide that you need to do rescans that you're continually working with. So again, you've got people that were dedicated to other production who are now dedicated to the digital process. And you want to start with, when you're setting up your process, you want to start with, you want equivalency. You want to make sure that your digital scanning is equal to what most people will say is the gold standard, which is the glass slide. But I'm saying you want to move quickly to an improved process. Is it really going to be acceptable that we have the same quality, the same capability, the same integration of information that we had with a glass slide and then stick in this digital? I don't think so. I think we have to be able to start with that and then quickly move to what our improved process is and where we're actually going to see big gains in this. So you have to use technology to enhance your expertise. And again, you can do it. I just don't know how you're going to effectively and efficiently integrate this humongous IT-dependent process now without having barcoding. Having somebody sitting at a computer terminal trying to pull all this together without barcoding is just going to be too cumbersome and just not doable. You have to integrate your LIS information into the workflow as soon as possible. Again, you can't. Most of us have been used to that the LIS is a little bit at accessioning and then maybe at the beginning, maybe a little bit with our IHC stainers, but that's near the middle to the end of the process. Again, you really have to find a way to integrate this whole information workflow into the whole integrated workflow of histology. And again, you have to have automated instruments at every step possible. You just don't have time to be doing other manual things because you're somewhat moving to, with loading and reviewing, you're going to be spending some manual process time there. But it will be valuable time spent. So if you can find other automated instruments in the total process, from whether it's an H&E stainer, a special stainer, an IHC stainer, how you do your processing, whatever you can find, whether it's an automated embedder, anything that can help, it's going to allow you to then reallocate the tech time from that into this digital process. And then you need a continuous workflow, because if you haven't set up a continuous workflow, then you're not going to be able to move to small batch. And if you're not going to be able to move to small batch, then you're going to have to figure out how you integrate digital pathology into your system in this large batch mode. I'm real confident that if you're not moving to small batch or large batch, you're losing half-day increments of your turnaround time. If you're lucky, maybe you lose a half day, and maybe your system is built around that you can incorporate that half day and not really truly affect the overall turnaround time. But most often, losing half-day increments move into full-day increments, and then in my world, that's not acceptable. You're going to have to work within it, in the set time constraints. So you've got to develop a small batch continuous workflow for all of your processes and instruments. So what do? You got to organize and plan again. Again, I know this is an overview, and I hope you understand that it's not simple. It is going to take some organization and planning. You can continuous flow automation if possible. If you're not doing that, you're developing a whole new workflow that can't truly be optimized. You have to reorganize that workflow to the small batch. And I know that sounds redundant, but you got to figure out. The ultimate small batch is for us in this process will be one slide. And we may not be what we can do, but we want to get it to the smallest batch as possible. You have to become intimate with your information technology department. Putting slides into a scanner and creating a digital image, pretty much you can own. Now, if you want to use that digital image and actually get it to somebody like the pathologist, if you're not fully engaged with your information technology department, it's not going to happen. So then you're not going to be successful. You have to integrate standardization and consistency in each step of your process. Again, reduce the variation, become efficient, then you develop more time to incorporate into and spend with the manual need of your technicians and technologists into your digital scanning process. And then start with quality and you'll end with quality. And my favorite term that I hear from pathologists all the time is, these slides are crap. I don't know where they learned it all, but I come up with the acronym CRAP is can't read is process, so, but very much so with digital scanning processes. Crap goes in, crap comes out. Too often I hear from people that, well, somehow the scanner is going to fix our other problems. It enhances and magnifies your problem, so you've got to really concentrate at the beginning of how we're going to be able to get the quality in and the quality out. So you spend all this time, you do all this planning, what are we going to get? You're going to get automation and streamlining of your slide management. This is a good thing for us. It's going to allow us to continue to integrate in new technology, more molecular technology, more PCR, more of that personal medicine technology. It's going to enhance, you're going to have an enhanced diagnostic pathology process. You're going to have a more integrated pathology report with the most detail that you can have. By incorporating digital scanning into your department, there's so many other side factors that we can use. You're going to have increased quality assurance through education, through just sharing of information. You're going to have increased communication and teaching. Pathologists will be able to share cases, difficult cases, on a broader base and more easily, not only with other pathologists, but also with histology. You're going to be pulled back into more of understanding exactly, if you don't now, understanding completely what you're creating in the histology lab and how you can affect that product that you're creating. You're going to get an integration of patient information with that slide, full integration and full reporting capabilities, enhanced reporting capabilities again. And then you're going to get productivity, workflow, collaboration. That again goes back to some of the standard principles of Lean and Six Sigma and continuous processing and small batching. Once you do that, you'll be able to effectively pull this into your laboratory and put out the enhanced results that you're really looking for and the pathologists are looking for. And ultimately, our patients are looking for. So what do we want? I can tell you from my point of view, I want fast, efficient acquisition and capture of the image. It just has to be there. You have to have an efficient process there with the digital scanner. We all want enhanced analysis tools. We want more algorithms. They're going to help the pathologist to make decisions, to help reinforce the pathologist's decisions. You want an integrated interpretation of the results, facilitation of information sharing and report generation. You know, more and more the end user is connected electronically, so more and more data can then be put into, instead of just a diagnosis line, more data can be put in and then shared out. I want a more efficient workflow also. And then ultimately what I'm looking for, and I hope that all of us are looking for, from start to finish, from the beginning accessioner to the pathologist, we want a process better than equivalent to current. We want better enhancement that allows us to give us a better differential diagnosis in the most quality assured way that really can change the patient experience. A couple of slides, the digital, what you can do, what you should be able to achieve. Here's some breast tissue. You've got to have good processing, good staining. It's got to be consistent each and every time. Breast invasive CA with ER. You want crisp, clean. Digital can enhance that, make it easier for the pathologist to come to a decision. And again, just some examples, some quick examples are HER2 in breast, cervical cone, another antibody. Most often, most of the scanning that I'm involved in is with immunohistochemistry. But it can be, again, frozen section, it can be consultation, it can be additional H&Es, recuts, special stains. So, again, a quick overview that it takes a lot of planning. It's not as simple as just plopping in a new piece of instrumentation, and without that planning, you take the risk of shutting down your whole system, and nobody wants to do that. So I hope this was a good introduction, and with that, I turn it back over to Alicia. Are there any questions?
We have a featured product that will be released soon, and it is a digital microscope. And what it allows us to do is be able to view live images before you scan an image, and you can do something what we call as partial size scanning, so you don't actually have to take a picture of the whole image itself. So for more information, you can contact your local Sakura rep. This product will be released soon, so be on the lookout for it. For those of you who have not already registered for our next webinar on May 24th, please do so on our website at sakura-americas.com. It will take place at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, Bill, I do have some questions, and I do apologize. I am fighting a cold, so if I do cough, I apologize. So the first question is, we learned about the histopathology connection for digital scanning. What can pathologists do once they receive scanned images? Annotate and save, zoom and save. What else and what time investments must the pathologist make in securing the selected images and saving it to the patient's report?
Well, that will really be dependent upon the system you purchase and their software, what I'll call the digital scanning software. How they're able to annotate, select, capture, create new images, and integrate that into the patient report. First starts with the digital scanning software, and then how that software can be integrated into the report, your normal AP or your LI or your hospital reporting software. There can be limitations. Not all software will allow a lot of digital addition of the digital images into your reporting software. I think most now. But all of that really starts with the digital scan software and how easily they'll allow the pathologist to do that. Most often, though, the pathologist sometimes will be looking at the initial scans and then may want something else rescanned. That's where a lot of times it loops back to the histology department again. It will be the pathologist, once they get past, if they have all the scans they need, they'll annotate them, but they may want new scans, and that's where you'll loop back to histology again. But it really starts with the digital scanning software and how that is connected to your reporting software, how much time and effort the pathologist is going to have to spend.
The next question is, what is the average cost today for a total lab setup of a high-quality digital scanning system? This should include high-speed network and data storage.
That's not a number I can really give you. It can start out in the tens of thousands of dollars and go into millions quickly, depending on what kind of intranet setup you have and servers. That's why I say it's important to get with your IT as you start thinking about digital, because this is not, we're going to need just a few dollars. You may have to be having new cable laid between locations. It's very hard to put that number on it, and it really depends on how many different sites that the information is going to have to be shared, but it quickly does add a lot of zeros if there has to be more IT infrastructure developed, because now you're looking at your whole company has to have a structure change, and that can be very, very expensive.
Thank you. The next question is the process FDA CAP approved?
At the last Digital Pathology Association meeting, primary diagnosis has not been approved by the FDA, but we're all doing ER, PR, HER2/neu, probably some EGFR. There are other things that can be done that are not, there's consulting, there's frozen section consulting, consulting of cases already been reviewed by a pathologist, but primary diagnosis is not approved in the pathology, clinical pathology, only in research.
Thank you. The next question is, what part of validation study is needed for this technology? Is there a framework?
I would go to things like the Digital Pathology Association or even to CAP, that there are recommendations for doing your validation. You know, if you're doing an algorithm that is FDA approved, you already have those guidelines for doing that, but as you develop new processes that, again, that don't particularly work with a diagnostic algorithm, medical director, laboratory director, and your accrediting associations will really decide what kind of validation protocol you will need.
Thank you. And one of our last questions, unless any some more are entered into the system, is does the scanner, or is the scanner able to pick up most of the special stains, and what is the average time to scan the slide?
Well, a digital scanner will pick up whatever's on your, you put in there as your glass slide. So whether it's a histochemical stain or whether it's an immunohistochemistry antibody reaction that has a counter stain to it, or an H&E, it will pick up those different entities because they have different refractive indices. The average time for scans varies, can vary. Most of your vendors will tell you they'll take a 15 by 15 millimeter, and they can do that in, you know, a couple of minutes. If you have a large, a whole piece of tumor that pretty much takes up your your over half of your glass slide, just keep adding time to it. But it really is dependent upon the different vendors and how they scan. Most of them get rid of the white space anymore, so they're only the digital scanner itself can quickly identify just where tissue is and just scan tissue, and not that whole slide and all that white space. But you can go from a couple of minutes to multiple. My own experience with some of the 40X scans and that can be 6, and these are small areas at high definition. 40X can be 6+ minutes for small areas if you want that kind of high definition.
Thank you. And of course, each manufacturer is going to vary.
Every manufacturer will vary, and it depends on their software, how they've helped to manipulate the process.
Perfect. I have a few other questions. What new QA requirements are needed? Is there a collaboration needed?
Well, you're going to have to set up QC, and the QA will be I would imagine the QA mostly is still going to be dependent upon the correlation from glass slide to digital, most often by your pathologist. We're going to have to make sure that both will then, they're going to get some sort of correlation concordance between what they see on the glass and what they see on their digital. It'd be no difference, their quality assurance, I'd imagine, would be no different than what we're setting up now for any of our quantitative algorithms that we're using for ER, PR. Again, pathologists are going to be mostly involved in that. QC, quality controls, can be incorporated into every step, but there is going to have to be a final correlation of glass slide with digital sludge.
I have our final question. Is there a course or framework for teaching new histotechs on the new technology? How do we educate our staff on these new issues?
Well, I haven't come across a defined course. Most of the information that you can gain and gather how histotechs can gain more information would be through organizations like the Digital Pathology Association. They have a meeting every year, and they are actually looking at this point to bring in more histotechnicians and technologists into the process. Vendors, all the vendors will have some information that they can share, but at this point I have not been able to find a structured course on putting this all together. We're kind of on our own. You got to kind of feel your way around, and that's what the basis of this webinar was, is that it can be difficult, and you have to start now, and you have to start learning some new things. A lot about IT, I guess, is where I would start. Well,
thank you, Bill. I do appreciate your time again this afternoon, and I appreciate everybody for participating in today's webinar. I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Take care.